Welcome to the Bulletproof Podcast. If you're having a fantastic day today, that's amazing. This episode is not for watching if you're on YouTube, it is for listening. So go for a walk, do some stretches at least while you're there, or drive around, listen to this. With that being said, this episode, we're going to delve right into it. What it will be around is these phrases, these coping sentences that we use on a recovery journey. And just in general, not just only on a recovering journey, I'll give you examples of what I was using for my coping strategies, tools, mechanisms. And with that, let's delve into it. Before I do that, of course, link in the description. You're going to find the app, Bulletproof Recovery app. It's a sober tracking app, free on the Apple App Store right now. The other one is the link where you can, various other links in there. School Community, for example, where there's addiction videos specifically aligned with what we're working with here today. All right, the coping strategies, the sentences. What are these? Well, for me, when I was an addict, when I was actually not an addict, when I was well, I suppose I was. My dad passed away, and I was had traumatized, and I was depressed, and I was becoming more and more depressed, if you know what I mean. And there was sentences that I used to cope, and those sentences, what I used, for example, would have been, "It's in the past. I can't do anything about it. Um, no matter what I do, it won't bring him back. It's over." These are just some that I was using, but I want to tell you some other ones. Blanket statements. These blanket statements, and I want you to be very curious of your own blanket statements that you use that I'll try to explain how they would be impacting you on a day to day or over a period of time. All right. But here's why they're common, right? So, one, they don't want to be wrong. So, it's like protecting your ego. So, you say these sentences to make you more secure, more okay, feel okay. So, it protects you, right? It also is another blanket statement for where you don't want to be shown that you're struggling, right? You know, one blanket statement would be, "I've moved on. It's in the past," right? Because if you said, "Yeah, it actually still impacts me every day," you don't want to be seen as if it's impacting you on a day to day, week to week. Another one is that I don't like, you don't want to start again. Now, what do I mean by that? You want to avoid effort of going through the coping, through the tools, through the mechanisms. So you just say, uh, it's in the past. I've moved on. Those examples, I just moved. It's over. So instead of actually going through it, you just put it over a shelf over there. And again, these are okay when they're okay. They're not okay when they're not okay. So when we're using a ton of blanket statements, we've got problems, right? Um, and the last area, why they're common, these blanket statements, I'll give you a list of blanket statements. And I've been collecting this list for a couple of weeks now from clients that have been using it, from my story, like I've just given you a moment ago. And these are very normal, very normal. And the last one being there of why these are common. Avoiding a vulnerability. So you don't want to admit that it's affecting you. You don't want to seem like it's in the past, but it's actually hurting me. Yeah. All right. I'm fine. Blanket statement. It doesn't affect me anymore. Blanket statement. I've moved on. A blanket statement. What is a blanket statement? Coping mechanism. A passing the buck. A disassociation. Which again, these are all okay when they're okay. It's not okay when I am depressed, I am an addict, and then I'm using blanket statements which only traps me in my own misery and darkness and frustrations and pain. We know someone in psychology, particularly me when I help people with addiction, we know this when we know someone has moved on when they're not using that substance, when they're not thinking about the person, time, place, thing, when they speak about it, they don't shut down, they're open, they're honest, they're vulnerable, they're content with their language. That's how we know that they've moved on. The challenge is the person says they've moved on, The other 5 analysts, maybe 5 analysts, 5 therapists, 5 doctors, 5 rehab centers, say that that person hasn't moved on. Metaphorically, they would say that they haven't moved on, but the person believes they have, and now we have a problem. The problem being they've created a narrative in their mind that they're okay, they're fine, they've moved on. And once they say that, they've put up the blinkers. So these blanket statements, that's on a maybe on a more extreme, serious, dark case. When I've just said there, we do this on a day to day. We do this on a friend to friend basis. We do this on a colleague and work basis. We do this on a normal thing. But when it comes down to the crunch, when it comes down to someone struggling with addiction, these blanket statements are very difficult to change someone else's mind because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be seen like they're struggling. It's it's a fascinating thing that happens. So another example, another areas is nothing can change. That's just the way I am. Nothing can change. You can't do anything about it. I can't do anything about it. That's just who I am. In other areas, I've healed. I've healed from that. I've done my work. I'm past that stage. I don't need help anymore. These blanket statements are okay when the person is okay. They're not okay when the person is struggling, down, depressed, irritable, avoidant, detachment, uh, escaping, running, fiddling. They're not okay when the person's using that. So I would ask, are you using these blanket statements and also having a miserable experience in life? They're okay in good context. If you can make a joke, if you can be open and honest, and then you can say at the end of that sentence, I've healed from it, rather than you saying, that pissed me off when I was younger, and it was a real misery, and I hate doing that stuff. It was a pain in the ass when I was going through it, but I've healed from it. That doesn't sound like someone that's healed from it. Yeah. What someone would say who's healed from that would be something along the lines of, it was a frustration when it hurt me a lot. It actually hurt me a lot. But I tell you this, I actually learned a lot from it. And these are a couple of things that I learned from that time, place thing. And now I believe I've healed from that. If it comes up, it might have a moment or two, but I'm definitely close to healing. This person has much more awareness. This person has much more acceptance. This person has much more validity, changing, enjoyment with the idea of change, of healing. But again, the person who's just shunting negative, 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 and then says, I've healed, it's just a cover up story. Negative, 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 cover up story. Negative, 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 patch the grass over that story that we've just said out loud. Here's another one. Everyone leaves. No one supports me. I've always messed things up. I never get a win. Never get a win. Throwing dirt over yourself. Not registering anything in the past. Not registering any win in the positive. Nobody supports me. Not registering any support around you. Is a very negative blanket statement. I used to be like that. Famous one. I used to be like that. But now I'm not. Famous sentence. And I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot. It's like, I used to be, lazy, unmotivated, fat, but now I'm different. Or now I'm changing. Now I'm changing is like a good sentence because it's present tense and future based where they're proactively doing stuff. But then again, the context would be, are they actually doing the stuff? So again, I could say I'm changing. I could say I was that way and I'm doing differently. But again, the context is, am I doing differently? I used to be insecure, but I'm not anymore. I used to be angry, but now I'm chill. That used to trigger me, but now it doesn't. Again, but now is a interesting sentence. The word but now, blanket statement. And the last context, the last situation is, I know already, right? Now, if you think about an obese person, and let's say you were to go up to an obese person when they're shopping, just had this experience today. I didn't go up to them, but I was just watching, observing, should I say? I don't know. I seen a person who is quote unquote obese, and they were walking around with one or two items in their hand. The items didn't really make logical sense in my eyes. There was no structure to it. Um, what that means is that they had like one healthy, one unhealthy. They weren't matching together. Like you wouldn't have like, fish and chips. It wasn't like fish and chips. It was like fish and like tea bags. Again, a little bit of context, a little bit of craziness, a little bit of a diversion there. But the context is, if I was to ask him, does he know what he's doing with his diet? What's the likelihood he says yes? The likelihood he says he knows what he's doing with his diet is very high, because he doesn't want to be vulnerable, doesn't want to be seen, doesn't want to be judged, doesn't want to be hurt. So I know what I'm doing. When he says, I know what I'm doing, that protects him in his idea, in his fantasy, in his thought process, in his delusion. And I say it's delusion because he's obese. I don't know this person, and there's tons of obese people in the world. Uh, the only person that would technically know what they're doing is someone that's like counting calories, is someone that is physical personal trainer, is someone that's in very good context, very good health, is a dietitian. These actually know what they're doing, right? So the same goes for someone. If you just meet someone in the gym, doesn't know exactly what they're doing, or if you go to a sports trainer, or you go to a sport, you literally just go to any sport. They know how to take the free kick. You don't need to tell them, because they already know how to do it. Everyone knows how to do things, but there's a rare person that's doing things. It's a big difference. Knowing doing gap is a real thing. So these blanket statements, doesn't affect me anymore. It's in the past. I can't do anything. All of these, very interesting. So what do you do? So what do you do with these blanket statements? Right. Well, what you do is basically analyze them when you say them. But now, I was. You can say, ask yourself a question. The question would be, what do I mean by that? I already know how to do that. What do I mean by that? And what that means and what that does is bring your attention to solutions, reality, facts. So do you know what you're doing with your diet? Do you know specifically what you mean by you know how to do your diet? Do you know specifically what you mean by how it doesn't affect you anymore? The purpose of that is to actually build that mindset and answers and resolves for how you do know you've dealt with it, you've healed with it. So if someone asks, is that thing in the past? You say, yeah, it's in the past. It doesn't affect me. What do you mean by that specifically? Now your mind has to think of answers to that question, which is a good thing for you to think about. Another one would be like a really deep introspective thought process, and it'd be something along the lines of, what am I covering up? What am I trying to hide from myself? Again, we do this all the time with everything. Our mind distorts, and our mind distorts billions of pieces of information every second. Billions of pieces of information every second our mind distorts. Right? So it's just another collection of information that it does. The point is to get a reframing on these things. Instead of using the words I'm fine, use a different sentence. I've healed, or I've healed, I've grown. I've grown a little bit, but I've still got a bit to go. Nobody supports me, but I haven't asked for help. What do we throw in that sentence at the end of it? Haven't asked for help clearly. It doesn't affect me. Well, Some of it affects me, which would probably be a more realistic and honest answer. And sometimes it does. Listen to the end of your sentence paragraphs. Listen to the end sentence of your paragraphs. I'm doing really bad and I hate this and this is all crap, but it gives me a paycheck. Dude, you just said like 18 different things that was really bad there. And that one sentence is supporting you and holding you, which is pretty cool, to be honest. That one sentence can support someone. So over the next 24 hours, give yourself an action of what blanket statements might you be using to protect, to avoid, to not use effort. And again, last context of this would be that these are useful when they're useful. These are helpful when they're helpful. It's kind of like, I've got to go for a big long hike. It's going to be dark. It's going to be depressing. But at the end of it, I'll feel great. Again, that's a useful sentence at the end because the hike is a productive and healthy thing. Got to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. It's going to be packed. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. But it will be beneficial for me. Great. Watch yourself doing it with your internal perceptive state of yourself. It's a lot more difficult. What I mean by that is that I was insecure. That grief is in the past. That the situation's in the past. That time is in the past. That person's in the past. This place is in the past. And watch how you do with your sentences on that. And if you're in good health, then you're in good health. All right, have a beautiful, blessed day. On this beautiful, blessed day, check out the links in the description, Bulletproof app recovery there, school community, and the other various links in that. With that being said, have an amazing day. You are amazing. I'll see you then.